Welcome to Toffee Blue View, your source for all things Everton. Terry, Max, and I'm Gerry. All three of us are here. You're welcome. So, guys, we're going to talk about Morgan Schneiderlin. Somehow he clawed his way back into the starting lineup against Cardiff, and he was back. I don't know if we thought for sure if he was going to be back for the derby or not, but he was. And you know what? He's performing well. He's protecting our defense. He's given us another shield, and frankly, the defense looks good with him in the game. It's a thing that we need to maybe start adjusting to. So let's talk about how Silva is setting up the team now that Schniederlin is in, and how the squad is approaching matches differently in terms of what we're actually doing differently as far as pressuring and the fact that if Schneiderlin's shielding, what are other players doing? So, Max, is it okay if I start with you on this, or would you rather?
It's more than fun.
Because it's man crush Morgan time, friends.
Oh no, I'm more than happy. I'm glad he's come back into the starting lineup. Like after the 17-day break, he's thought, you know, conceding far too many goals. Let's bring him back in. Let's see what he can do. Obviously, that's obviously going to cause some sort of reaction with the Everton fans, particularly after some of his performances last season. Like, he's done everything to be on a supporter's bad books that you could do. You know, you could see him half-arse in games last season, but he's not now since he's come back into the team. He's screening the back four really well. And I think, obviously, in that last game against Cardiff, you see how that frees up Idris Gueye, and you know that to bomb on and push forward. I said in the last podcast that may just be because of the fact that it was Cardiff, and that might have been the case because Idris Gueye didn't look to get forward as much. But that was still, I think, the idea of how the team adjusts. Really, Idris Gueye pushes forward and adds another number to the attack, and Schneiderlin screens. I mean, as Teddy said, he did get sloppy towards the end, and which is quite a tendency of him. But, you know, that's where you bring Andre Gomez in. So, you know, I'm happy if it continues to be that way.
Terry, how you feeling about the job Schneiderlin's doing?
Can't fault him for the last two games. He's made a massive difference. Like, even just statistically, 0 goals conceded in 2 games. Not all down to him, but he's a big part of it. I think he's got a long way to go to get back to being seen as a legitimate, you know, serious player in the squad, because I still think if the season ended now, he'd still be on a lot of people's lists to be sold, or on lists, you know, like on the deadwood list, as it were. He can come off that though. He said, you know, he's not so far gone that he couldn't come off it. And putting my cynical hat on, I do wonder whether this Idris Gueye to PSG thing has sort of given him a carrot to play, you know, sort of, to not only train more intensely, but to try and make his point when he plays, because Silva did say that before the Cardiff game, that in the 17-day gap, so Schneiderlin had really made a point of wanting to play. He'd really, you know, flogged himself in training to try and make the team. So he said, "I'm going to put him in and see how he does." And he's earned the manager's trust for the past 2 games. If he can carry that on for the rest of the season, then maybe he could earn himself a spot going forwards. He said, well, I could actually make my career here. I could carry on as an Everton player. Because I think a lot of people, even before this, somebody had assumed that he was going to go to Marseille. It seemed to be a very heavy rumour, and that it was one of those ones that didn't seem to go away. But he's still here, and the Marseille deal hasn't materialised yet. So maybe he's had a change of heart and said, you know what? I want to be here. I want to play for this manager, and he could still be that number 6 shielding player, especially if Idris Gueye goes and we bring in a different, you know, sort of type of midfielder to go in maybe alongside Andre Gomez and Schneiderlin. It's an interesting one, because when we got him, he was absolutely fantastic. He was the key player in the team almost immediately.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't he the first player bought with Machiri money? I think he was.
No, he wasn't, because
we had before that.
We had Idris Gueye and Balassi before him. Remember, we bought in that summer Idris Gueye, Balassi, and Williams, that was all Mashiri money because it was Steve Walsh, remember?
Oh, yeah.
And then Koeman bought him in the January. He was one of the first, and he was a big Koeman player. Koeman saw him as like the linchpin of his midfield. He wanted to build his midfield around him. And that first 6 months, I could see why. A lot of people called him it, but he was seen as a Rolls Royce of a player. He played in that number 6 role and just controlled the whole game from our point of view. And it just dropped off. He just dropped off badly last season. No, everyone did, but he was one of the most severe, changes. He'd gone from being quality to being terrible overnight, and just need to. Yeah, I think now it's just a point of which Morgan Schneiderlin do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that we bought or the one that we ended up with a little bit later on? Because if he could recapture that form when he first came in, he'd still be a quality player to have. He was so good that we sold Gareth Barry on the back of how good he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned Silva talking about how Schneiderlin had been training lately. Schneiderlin's father passed away, I believe, earlier this season, and I'm under the impression that it was kind of affecting his mentality, and lately he's just started to kind of get a little bit more back to normal. I'm not sure what explains his half-assing toward balls in the box last season. That was really frustrating to watch. That kind of made me write him off. I'll just go ahead and say I was really angry at Schneiderlin. I was ready to sell him as soon as I saw him not sprint, because I'm sorry. I was always, whenever I played that game, I was always a hustle guy, and so that's the only thing that I really had was actually busting my ass for every single ball. And when somebody doesn't do that, somebody as talented as he is, that just makes me so angry. And so, however, he's had this turnaround of mentality. His effort has gone up. And he's clearly doing what Silva wants him to do. And this complicates things in a way. I'm curious how much it complicates it for this summer in terms of transfers and whatnot. I'm really curious. I'm also so, I mean, if he starts playing more, does this mean Gomez plays less? Is there a possibility that Gomez is not happy with subbing in the last 15 minutes of games? And the more Schneiderlin actually gets back up to speed, does that mean he won't need to be subbed at the tail end of games as much? And if Gomez isn't playing regularly, he's not going to be happy. So does Gomez become less of a priority for us this summer in terms of purchasing him? Because we're thinking of laying out a decent amount of money for him this summer if he's going to be playing a lot. But if he's not going to be playing as much, I don't know. I think he's a vitally important player. I'm making conversation here because I think it's interesting to analyze. You know what I mean?
Particularly if Idrissa Gueye is on his way to Paris.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is a priority for the summer, and I really like that idea of what Teddy brought up before, that of a 3-man midfield with Schneiderlin, Gomez, and whoever. But that could be another target for the summer.
I think that's jumping the gun a little bit as well. Like, Schneiderlin's come in and we've had 2 decent games with him. Like, still don't think for 1 second that he's ahead of Andre Gomez in the pecking order. I think Gomez is just a little spell out of the team, and Schneiderlin will very quickly come out of the team if the manager wants him to. I think Gomez is still the priority player for the summer. I think he's the type of player that Silva want to build his Everton team around, and I don't blame him, to be honest, considering how good he was.
So, if Idrissa leaves, we have to replace him. There's going to be a replacement. Gomez will not be the replacement. It will be someone in the mold of a Decore, right? We know that's the type of player that Silva salivates over, and he makes a huge part of his squad. So that player would be in. Gomez would be in if we purchase him. Schneiderlin, depending on which Schneiderlin we get, you're right. It's hard to. All this conversation depends on Schneiderlin actually maintaining consistency, which he hasn't done for a while. So we're going to see if that actually continues. And all this also not to be, let me put on my cynical hat. It could be Schneiderlin's just busting his ass because he wants to be able to get a move this summer. So there's all these different, reasons for this stuff. Right now it's a good problem to have, though. I'd be curious. You mentioned that three-man midfield with Schneiderlin, Gomez, and whoever the replacement would be for Idrissa Gueye. I guess that makes things a little complicated as far as Gylfi Sigurdsson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, at this point, it's trying to work that out. I'd be curious how that would work. I think it seems like games in which we need a goal, Sigurdsson stays in, Gomez subs in for Schneiderlin. Games in which we want to protect a lead, Sigurdsson goes out, Gomez comes in. You know what I mean? It's one of the patterns. I think we could see a similar pattern with if you replace one or two of the center options that we have. So
you've got to remember as well, when you think about it, if we do sell Idrissa Gueye, which looks quite likely at the minute, then we've only got really as permanent midfielders Schneiderlin and Davies, and McCarthy, who never really plays due to injury. So by Gomez and then replace Idrissa Gueye, you've still only really got 4 viable midfield options for a middle three. If you don't include McCarthy, you've got Schneiderlin, Davies, new player X, and Gomez. So I think Schneiderlin, the sort of revival of Schneiderlin under Silva might just be, pragmatism. Going, he's an all right, a decent player if I can get him playing. And I can't afford to spend all my transfer budget buying 3 or 4 midfielders. I need other positions. I need, right back. I need right midfield. I need forward. I can't buy a whole new midfield department. I might have to get something out of Schneiderlin and make him an option again, which he has done these last 2 games.
There's nothing wrong with depth. We've talked about it before. The idea of being able to rotate and not lose anything. The idea of being able to make some subtle changes in the middle of a game that tweaks just maybe changes a slight pressure point here or there just because of a slight difference in a player. I feel like Silva definitely wants 2 good options at every single position. Every one. And that's the type of depth he wants. And we don't have that. So it could be, we're talking about this, it just depends on which players are comfortable not starting every single game. And those are the type of players that seem like they're all about the team and want to be here. The players that want to play every single game and have to and want those assurances probably won't stay long at our club. It doesn't seem like Silva is down with that. So... interesting. It's a great thing. He came back. He's winning me back, Max. He's winning me back. Your bud. I like a good redemption story.
For me, it's just the type of player that he is, the kind of lackadaisical Roman midfielder that screams the back four. When he plays well, doesn't get as much credit as he should. I think a larger example of that is like an Ivan Rakitic. Just that type of player. I wish he was a bit more agile and could push forward a little bit more.
Yeah,
I don't mind.
You're a sucker for an unheralded defensive center mid or center mid type of player who doesn't get the credit they deserve. That's one of the things I've noticed. You're just like, oh, give me that player that nobody mentions. That's my guy. You know?
If I could have Gareth Barry back, I would tomorrow. Telling you.
I remember you mentioning making sure I mentioned Ilkay Gundogan from City, and we were. He's not really the player you think of when you think Dangerman from City, but you're like, damn it, he's so good. I'm like, yeah, he is. So, oh man. So, anyway, Morgan Schneiderlin. Anything else on this guy, fellas? Anything that we feel like we have not brought up? He's adding a different dimension to our, and he's allowing other players to kind of become more creative. Idrissa Gueye in particular, and you've noticed that we are getting the ball to Sigurdsson more often with Schneiderlin in as well. That could be just a coincidence and a change of focus for Silva, but Yeah, I like it though. We're actually moving the ball to the center more instead of just bombing the flanks and crossing back. And, yeah.
Since we don't mention him very often, I'm just going to get this in now. Thank God he changed the squad number. A midfielder having number 2 is a travesty.
We all groaned when that happened. That was ridiculous.
Oh, that hurt my soul when I saw that. And when I found out he changed it, I was so happy. Just that alone just gave him some points in the plus column for me when he changed it to 18.
Mm-hmm. And on that bombshell. All right. So Morgan Schneiderlin, he's back, new and improved. Yeah, we'll have some of that. It's good. And Max continues to smile. He's like, I knew it the whole time. All right, so that's it for our Morgan Schneiderlin segment. Positive vibes, which is good. Performing well. Let's hope it. Long may it continue. If you're digging the videos, please subscribe to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel. Would sincerely appreciate it. If you'd like to read some of Terry's analysis, he shows up every once in a while on the Liverpool Echo fan jury. So keep an eye on his Twitter. He'll tell you when. He'll be there. Max also, besides being a strapping dude with a tie, he also puts a lot of analysis out there on the interwebs. Sometimes it's about football in general. A lot of times it's about Everton. So keep an eye on his Twitter. He'll tell you when and where that can be seen or heard. But on the Toffee Blues website, he's he frequents there. His work graces the pages of the Toffee Blues website. So keep an eye on that. It's a brand new website. Quizmaster John rocked that out. So you should check it out. Guys, that's it. Let's talk about, I guess we have to talk about Walcott. Somebody's got to do it. All right. Bye.